Here's the part I've been building to for 5 walks. If you've stuck with me this far, thank you. This is the one that matters. I told you to remember Thomas Midgley Jr., the man who put lead in your gasoline. Here's the second thing he made. In 1928, he invented chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, Freon. You've had them in your refrigerator and your air conditioner and your aerosol cans for most of the 20th century. When CFCs reach the stratosphere, ultraviolet light breaks them apart and releases chlorine, which catalytically destroys ozone. The ozone layer is the thing that keeps the sun's ultraviolet radiation from cooking every living thing on the surface of the Earth. By the 1980s, satellites were measuring a hole in it over Antarctica, the size of a continent. One man, 2 of the most catastrophic industrial products in the history of the world. Historians sometimes joke that Thomas Midgley Jr. had more impact on the atmosphere than any other single organism in the history of the planet. It's dark, but it's not wrong. Now here's the part that matters. What happened next? If you missed the last 5 walks, my name is Scott, this is episode 6 of Philosophy Walking, and this is our 360-degree walk through course. If you're new to 360 or the picture looks off, the description explains how to use it on each device. The YouTube app on your phone is best. The short version of the series is this. Competition is an engine. It has no conscience, and when you point it at something you don't own, it will burn that thing down to hit its target. We've watched it aimed at nuclear weapons, at your paycheck, at your government, and at the products you use every day. Today is the walk where the diagnosis becomes a prescription. Today is the walk where I tell you what all of it has been about and what the answer is. Now, here's where I have to be honest with you, because if you've been paying attention, you've noticed something. Everything I've described, the corrupt politician, the polluting company, the cornered worker, none of it is actually a failure of competition. Competition is doing exactly what it's designed to do. It's finding the shortest path to the goal. The problem is what we've told it to optimize for: money, market share, quarterly earnings, votes, and it hits those targets. It just burns down everything on the way. Competition is a tool. We turned it into a worldview. That's why I opened this the way I did. Because reason on its own, cold reason, competitive reason, will find you a way to poison the river and call it efficient. It'll find you a way to bust the union and call it freedom. It'll find you a way to sell a product that kills people and call it consumer choice. Reason will get you there. Reason is very good at getting you there. What reason can't do, what it has never been able to do, is tell you whether you should be going there in the first place. That's what compassion is for. Compassion is the thing that looks at the plan and says, wait, who gets hurt? Whose river? Whose kid? Whose town? Reason without compassion isn't wisdom. It's just a very fast machine pointed at a cliff. And this is where a word most people have forgotten becomes the whole ball game. The commons. The commons is everything we share and nobody owns. Physical, intellectual, cultural, ecological, spiritual, the air, the water, the oceans, the climate, the public square, the knowledge in libraries, the trust between neighbors, the peace on a street, language, law, memory, and meaning, truth, justice, and care. The commons is not owned but held in trust, for each other, for our descendants, and for life itself. It is what makes a civilization actually a civilization instead of just a bunch of people standing near each other. And here's the trick. You can't compete over the commons without destroying it. You can only take care of it together. That's not a moral opinion. That's just how the thing works. Here's the trick that makes the whole machine work. Keep the profit private and push the cost into the commons. The factory keeps the profit, the river gets the poison, the company keeps the dividend, the public gets the cancer, the executive keeps the bonus, the taxpayer gets the cleanup. That's what externalities are, and they make the world worse for everyone. The moment one person says, the river is mine to dump in, the river is gone for everyone. The moment one company says, the atmosphere is mine to fill with carbon, the climate belongs to nobody. The moment one politician says, the truth is mine to shape, democracy starts to rot. The commons needs 2 things to survive, and it needs both. It needs reason because you have to actually understand how a fishery collapses, how an aquifer drains, how a lie spreads. Compassion alone won't save the river. You need to know the science. But it also needs compassion because reason alone will tell you your share is whatever you can grab before someone else does. Compassion is what makes you stop grabbing. Reason tells you the rules. Compassion tells you why the rules matter. Take one away and the whole thing falls. And I know what you might be thinking. Great idea, but people never actually do that. The commons is a nice theory, but in the real world it always gets grabbed. Except that isn't true. Let me tell you about the Netherlands. Roughly a third of the country sits at or below sea level. It has always sat at or below sea level. If the Dutch didn't cooperate on water, the country would drown, and they figured this out about 800 years ago. Starting in the 13th century, Dutch farmers began organizing themselves into what they called waterschappen, water boards, local councils that maintained the dikes, the pumps, the drainage. They elected their own representatives. They taxed themselves to pay for the work. They fined anyone who let their section of the dike fall apart because everyone's section had to hold or everyone drowned. Some of those water boards, in slightly modernized form, still exist today. They are among the oldest continuously operating democratic institutions on Earth. That is the commons. That is what protecting it looks like. It's not utopia. It's not soft. It's an 800-year track record built by people who understood that if they didn't take care of what they shared, they would die. And it isn't just old and local. Remember the ozone hole. Remember Midgley's second invention, eating a hole in the sky. In 1987, essentially every country on Earth during the Cold War, at the height of superpower rivalry, signed something called the Montreal Protocol. They agreed to stop making CFCs. Every country. It's the only treaty in the history of the United Nations that has been ratified by every single member. And it worked. The ozone layer is healing. Scientists now expect it to fully recover by roughly the middle of this century. We looked at a problem that was going to kill everyone on the planet, and, because for once nobody could pretend the atmosphere belonged to them, we cooperated our way out of it. Thomas Midgley Jr. broke the sky. Humanity fixed it. That is not a fairy tale. That happened in our lifetimes. Everything you've just walked through was pointing toward a document I've been writing for months. A civic covenant. Something between a manifesto and a Bill of Rights. It's called the Social Contract of the Commons, and I've been quoting it to you since the opening minute of episode 1 without telling you. When I opened this series and called willful ignorance a civic sin, that wasn't a metaphor. That is Article 3 of the Social Contract, the duty of inquiry. To seek knowledge relentlessly, and to name the abandonment of that seeking as a sin against the shared world. That was the first duty. And every walk in this series has been about another duty either being upheld or being abandoned. Episode 5, the playbook, the leaded gasoline, the industry that knew and sold anyway. That was the duty of stewardship being abandoned at industrial scale. To protect what you make, what you sell, what you owe to the people who will use it. When stewardship is abandoned at the level of a single company, you get love canal. When it's abandoned across an industry, you get lead in every child's bloodstream for 50 years. When it's abandoned across an entire civilization, well, we'll get to that in the next walk. Episode 3, the worker in Manila competing with the worker in Ohio, the phone tree, the fire in 1911, and the collapse in 2013. That was the duty of solidarity. To stand with those oppressed or excluded, and to honor their full place in the civic whole. When solidarity is abandoned, the strong get to write rules where every worker races the next one to the bottom. Episode 4, the foretells, the fog of PR speak, the Roman Senate murdering elected tribunes to defend their private landholdings. That was the duty of justice. To confront injustice wherever it thrives, especially when dressed in tradition or legality. When justice is abandoned, the wealthy write the laws and the poor bear the cost. And episode 3 named another duty I haven't yet called by name. The duty of civic time. The time to think, to rest, to serve, to care, to create, to grow. The time an economy running on productivity metrics tries to strip from you. That duty exists because the fog cannot survive contact with a rested, thinking citizen who has the time to ask the next question. There are more duties, 13 in total. I won't list them all here, but The point I want you to hold on to now is this. Every walk in this series has been a demonstration of what the commons costs when a duty is abandoned. The four tells were how you spot the abandonment as it's happening. The commons is what the duties were built to protect. And watch the social contract of the commons. It's linked in the description. It's the framework document behind everything this walk has just laid out. The rights of every citizen of the commons, the duties every citizen owes back to it, and what a state that actually served the commons would look like. If it resonates with you, I've also made a related piece called The Universal Declaration on Equality, Human Rights, and Justice, plus supporting videos in the playlist linked below. This walk was the theory. Those pieces are the covenant that turns theory into a shape you can live by. So should we be cooperating more instead of competing? Yes, not everywhere. Competition over who bakes the best bread, sure, let it rip. But competition over the commons, competition over each other, competition as the answer to every question, no. That road ends where we're already starting to see it end. Burning forests, rising seas, empty aquifers, hollowed out towns, governments that don't govern, a generation that can't afford a house on the planet that raised them. That's what you get when you point the machine at everything and forget to ask what it's for. Cooperation isn't a soft idea, it's the harder one. It asks you to see the person you'll never meet, downstream, downwind, downstream in time, your grandkids, someone else's grandkids, and count them as part of the equation. That's the civic sin I opened with. Not that people compete. People will always compete for some things. The sin is pretending the commons isn't there. Pretending the downstream person doesn't exist. Pretending you can win a game where the board itself is on fire. That's why we need a system that better works for all of us. For everyone, equally, for our planet that we depend on for life. Reason plus compassion. Protecting what we share. Naming what's being taken. Refusing the story that we have no choice. Because here is what I want you to walk away from these 6 walks understanding, and it's the single clearest sentence I can give you for it. Competition is a useful optimization mechanism, but it is a disastrous moral philosophy. Aim it at bread and you get bakeries. Aim it at the world and you get what we have. If you agree with all of that, watch my video, The Cincinnatus Paradox, Why Good Leaders Are So Rare. Because once you know what a healthy commons looks like, the next question is who's fit to protect it, and why the ones who want the job the most are almost never the ones who should have it. And watch the social contract of the commons. It's linked in the description. It's the framework document behind everything this walk has just laid out. The rights of every citizen of the commons. The duties every citizen owes back to it. And what a state that actually served the commons would look like. This walk was the theory. The social contract is the covenant that turns theory into a shape you can live by. But we have one more walk to take before we sign off on this series, because the commons doesn't stay abstract for long. And there is one place, right now, this decade, in every country on Earth, where every idea we've just talked about is being tested against a live threat larger than anything we've walked through yet. Stewardship at civilizational scale. The atmosphere is the common, the sky itself. Now you understand the framework. Now let's see whether the framework survives contact with reality. The next walk is that test. Next walk, the sky we share, climate and the commons at planetary scale. Because climate change is what happens when the externalized cost isn't a river or a neighborhood. It's the atmosphere. It's the planet itself. Thank you for walking with me.